Trash. How y'all doing? Everybody enjoy their college football Saturday. Week 6 already of the 2022 college football season is in the books. Season halfway over for a lot of teams. If you played 6 games, regular season halfway over. Still got a few teams that have only played 5 because they've already had a bye week. But man, season half over, and it makes sense because guess what? Turns out well over half the teams are absolute doo-doo. And we got to highlight some of those teams today. God, we better get started because we got a bunch of losers. The list of losers this week was amazing. Look at this. 2 pages of copious notes for today. Normally, I'm able to get it all on 1 page. Not the case today. Too many losers this weekend. Man, we could start literally anywhere. As usual, I'm going to highlight the list of losers for you. Then I'm going to talk about some teams that won yesterday and I thought looked good. Some teams that won yesterday. And I thought maybe didn't look that good. I'll tell you who the best teams are. According to Uncle Lou. I'll tell you who the best teams are. And I'll give you the Heisman list. And I have an extremely updated Heisman list today. Extremely updated. And narrowed down. Yeah, some names fell off. Anyway, let's get started. I guess we just start on the top. What do we have here? What is this? The Miami Ducks. The Miami Ducks have been on this for 3 weeks in a row? No, not 3 weeks in a row. 3 of the last 4 weeks. Because they had a bye week. The only time in the last month Miami hasn't been on here was when they didn't play. 3 straight L's for the Miami Ducks. Is that true? My God. Lost to Texas A&M. Humiliated by Middle Tennessee State. And then guess what we heard after that all during the bye week and heading up to this game? Don't matter. Texas A&M, Middle Tennessee State, don't matter. That's what the Duck Man told you. Why? Well, those weren't ACC games. Those weren't ACC games. Those were not ACC games. Woo. Okay, well, yesterday was an ACC game, and you dribbled down your leg, didn't you? A runny one. A runny one down your leg against North Carolina. North Carolina, it's hard to talk about anybody's defense being bad other than Oklahoma's, which, believe me, we'll get to. But North Carolina's defense is horrendous. Miami had trouble moving the ball on 20-something points they scored. You lose the game to a North Carolina team that's nowhere near as good as we thought they would be. And of course, neither are you. Neither are you. Uncle Lou, how dumb am I, Duck Man? I had Miami going 10-2. 10-2. See, hell, you've already lost. Have you lost 3 games? Losing record? Miami's 2-3. First week of October. Season's only halfway over. You better start looking at the schedule, Duck Man. You got Clemson on there. Guess what else? Listen to me. Listen. And listen close. Listen very close to me, Miami man. You see this? You see this? They're still exceeding expectations this year. Okay? Yeah, they're on this list today, and we'll talk about them in a minute. If y'all played tomorrow, they would Donkey Kong you for 4 quarters. How does that make you feel, Miami man? Not only are you worse than expectations, not only did you get humiliated by a way below average group of 5 team in Middle Tennessee State, who I believe lost again this weekend. So they haven't won a game since they beat you. Lost to James Madison earlier in the year, 44-7. Shows up and whips you, though. The season's over for Miami. Florida State's going to drag you. Clemson's going to drag you. Look, that's 5 losses. That's 5 losses. You've pretty much got to win out after that to finish 7-5. Can Miami finish 7-5? I say it's unlikely. They're probably going to drop. Hell, y'all might not make a bowl game. Y'all might go 5-7. Penn State's undefeated still, by the way, and in everyone's top 10. Handy Manny Diaz said to tell y'all hello, Mario Cristobal. You get what you get. A good recruiter who shits the bed multiple times a year. Didn't y'all learn anything from his time at Utah? Look at all the teams that while Mario Cristobal was at Oregon. Why'd you say Utah, Lou? Well, because Utah owned him when he was there. That's why I blew him out twice last year. Look at all the teams that Mario Cristobal would lose to year after year. That he had the way more talented team. Get used to it, Duck man. Your season is over. Makes me mad too. I'm not falling for the Miami shit anymore. I'm not. It seems like every year I'm higher on Miami than anybody else with a functioning brain. And every year I get proven wrong. I'm done with it. I'm done with it. Miami's a disaster. Does it matter who the coach is? God, y'all been in the ACC since 2004. Yet to win it. You've only won the division once. Once. In 18, now 19 years. This is friggin' sad. Friggin' sad. Miami should be a dominant program in any conference they're in. Never mind the ACC, which is a trash can most years. Y'all can't win the damn thing once in 2 decades. You're not doing it again this year. It's only one ACC loss. Hey, well, one, it might as well be 100. You're not beating Clemson. You're not beating Florida State. And there's likely 1 or 2 more losses on there. Give that up. Give that up. Oh, wait till the recruiting class. Who cares? Look at the Oregon recruiting class. That's what I'm telling you. So what? You're going to be losing these games with the 8th most talented team in the country instead of losing these games by having the 15th most talented team in the country? The results are going to be the same. You can't win the damn ACC. What a joke. It seems like forever since these clowns won it too. Florida State. Doesn't give me any pleasure. Look, Florida State at least lost to a good team yesterday. Miami lost to North Carolina. And, it was a pretty good game. I felt like NC State was kind of in control of that thing. But I picked Florida State to win. I thought NC State, I felt like coming off of that loss to Clemson last week, I just really felt like NC State as a team and honestly as a coaching staff had just put so much emphasis, effort, and energy on that Clemson game. I mean, literally circled it, pointed to it all year. They beat Clemson last year, but weren't able to play well enough, consistently enough to win the division. I feel like they really felt like this was the year with all they had coming back on defense and all they had coming back with the quarterback, who's been a huge disappointment. I felt like they were looking at that Clemson game and saying, we're going to win that Clemson game early in the year, and then potentially we could run the table. They gave it all they had against Clemson, but it wasn't enough. And I figured they may have a letdown this week against what I think is a pretty good Florida State team. And it didn't happen. NC State played pretty well. Now, I thought Florida State played okay too. A few mistakes here and there. But Florida State, lost again now. How did you, at least, thank God you beat LSU, because listen to me. That win you got against LSU, I know you're beating your chest because you beat an SEC team. And look, congratulations. You can put that on your tombstone, I guess. LSU is looking worse and worse every week. And yeah, they're over there too. You already know we're going to talk about the abomination that is LSU. But Florida State, you took another L, your second one. Florida State, can they still get to 8 wins? Yeah, probably. Man, you talk about a team I did not want to put on here. And what a shame, too. Oh, did you see that? Uncle Lou almost fell down there. Yeah, need a step stool in that. It gives me no pleasure to talk about Kansas on the Your Season is Over list. And it feels kind of weird, I'm going to be honest with you. It feels a little weird putting the Kansas helmet back on top of the Texas helmet, considering what Texas did yesterday. Unfortunately, what Texas did yesterday doesn't have anything to do with the helmet being upside down. If you've been paying attention to Uncle Lou every day like you're supposed to, then you already know the Texas helmet is staying upside down and the Kansas helmet is staying on top of it if and until Texas beats Kansas. But Kansas did lose yesterday to what might be a top 10 team when the polls come out this week. My new rankings will be out tomorrow, and we'll see how far up I move TCU. But TCU in back-to-back weeks has had impressive wins. Now, we know Oklahoma's a trash can, but TCU blew them out. That's what you got to do to trash cans. Yesterday's TCU Kansas game might have been the game of the day. It might have been the game of the day. Kansas kept hanging in there, had a chance at the end of the game to win it or tie that thing up, and it just what it wasn't in the cards for Kansas yesterday for whatever reason. But man, what a difference in Kansas from a couple of years ago to now. And to what can we credit that? Well, a smart coaching hire, which there's a lot of teams across the country that are busy licking their own taint in the corner of a dark room right now that need to learn that lesson. Need to learn that lesson. You got to hire the right coach, don't you, Miami? Huh? Don't you? Don't you, Oklahoma? Don't you, LSU? You got to hire the right coach. Kansas did it. And look, Kansas lost. I'm not dropping Kansas in my ranking. Hell no. I'll move TCU up some. I'm not going to drop Kansas. Why? For losing to a really good TCU team? Close? Not going to happen. Kansas is still going to be a ranked team, no matter how mad it makes people. But Kansas, you did take a loss. And let's be honest, it's pretty rare that during a season we ever even get to talk about Kansas, especially in week 6, because they're usually so irrelevant by the second or third week of the year that we never even have to waste any time talking about them. So it's really a compliment to Kansas that I'm talking about them today. I don't know if there are any Kansas football fans that show up to watch this, but if there are, I know you're new here because you've never, ain't never been none before. This doesn't actually mean that your season is over, okay? The your season is over list is just an analogy that I use to talk about teams that lost yesterday. And unfortunately for the Jayhawk man, that happened to be you. Great atmosphere yesterday with College game day there, though. And Kansas can still have a really good year. I mean, look, making a bowl game is they throw parade over there if you make a bowl game. So Kansas is still going to have a really good year, but you lost to TCU yesterday. Congratulations, man. Now, you want to talk about a team whose season really is over? Utah. Your season's over, Utah. Where are we going to put you? We'll put you right here. There you go. Put you right back up there. Pac-Doo-Doo or Pac-12, whatever it's called. You shouldn't have lost that game week 1 to Florida. That's the reality. Now, this is Utah's first Pac-12 loss, so, they're going to run around telling you, well, if we win out, that means we would beat this team and that team, and if they lose a game here and that team beats this team, then we can still make the Pac-12 title game. Whoopity-doo, you're not getting into playoffs. Sorry, you're not getting into playoffs, and that was Utah's goal. Cam Rising returned for his senior year or 8th year, whatever it is. Everybody's got so many years now because of the COVID extensions, but and you crapped the bed on the road against UCLA, and there were at least 300 people there to see it. The UCLA crowd ought to be ashamed of themselves. UCLA is 5-0 now, 6-0, whatever they are. They're going to be ranked close to the top 10 probably this week, if not in the top 10. And literally nobody will show up to watch them. It's a shame. It's a shame. Congratulations, Big Ten. That's what you're getting. A fan base that doesn't give a shit that they have a top 10 team that's undefeated for the first time since anybody can remember. That's what you're getting. But Utah, your season is over. And it's not really because you lost to UCLA, because turns out UCLA is a pretty good team. It's because you crapped the bed week 1 against Florida in a game you should have won. Florida's not very good. Anthony Richardson can't complete a pass if his life was on the line. Cameron Rising, your best player offensively, the hero, right? He had a chance to win that thing for you at the end, and he threw an interception. So that's where really you screwed up. If this would have been your only loss, UCLA, and you run the table and you end up winning the Pac-12 at 12-1, given your track record the last couple of years, you may have snuck into the playoffs with a 4 seed at 12-1 and a loss, a conference loss. Not 2 losses, and one of them being to a terrible Florida team, though. So sorry, Utah, season over. And shout out to UCLA, man. Shout out to, do I even have a UCLA helmet? Yeah, I do. That's the craziest thing I ever said. Of course I have a UCLA helmet. Shout out to the Bruins, fighting Chip Kelly's DTR. He's up, he's down, he's up, he's down. The QB for UCLA. Played good enough yesterday to win. Still undefeated, UCLA. You know who ain't undefeated and wasn't anyway? Kentucky. We had a backup quarterback. Georgia won a national title with a backup quarterback, and we're currently 6-0 with a backup quarterback. That's what Stetson Bennett is. He just happens to be starting. Okay? Just like the case for Kentucky yesterday. Will Levis was out. That's a crying shame. So you had to play backup, and turns out he's horrible. You know what Kentucky looked like yesterday? Kentucky looked like every Kentucky team I've seen under Mark Stoops that didn't have Will Levis. Every single one. That was Kentucky's problem for eons. Good defense, good running game, good lines of scrimmage. Couldn't complete a pass, period. I remember they played Georgia a few years ago where I believe they only attempted 1 pass the entire game. They get Will Levis, who is an NFL quarterback, whether you love him or hate him, whether you love Kentucky or hate Kentucky. Will Levis is going to be a first-round pick. And he's played well at times for Kentucky. But you can't play well if you don't play. And he didn't play yesterday. He was injured. And, we hate injuries here. Everybody hates injuries. You never want anybody to get injured. But he wasn't the only team that played with a backup quarterback yesterday. And some of those teams won. But it might not have looked that good doing it, though. What is that? Damn gump helmet. But Kentucky, second loss in a row. I sort of feel like this isn't the loss that really hurts Kentucky. It's last week. You had a chance to beat Ole Miss. You're down there inside the 5-yard line with the game on the line. You throw a touchdown pass. There's a penalty. The points get taken off the board. That would have been the game-winning touchdown. They back you up 5 yards to the 6 or 7 yard line, whatever it was. Will Levis gets sacked, fumbled. Ole Miss jumps on it. Never mind the missed field goals and all that crap you had in that game too. That was your opportunity to win, right? Then if Will Levis has to sit out this week and you take a small loss to a horrible South Carolina team, which that's what they are. They're horrible. And for some reason you run the table, which, I'm not even suggesting you would, but it's the Utah thing. But for you, right? 12-1, and they go, but they lost at home to South Carolina. And then the playoff committee goes, yeah, but Will Levis didn't play. And they've said they take that kind of thing into consideration. So you should have beat Ole Miss last week when you had the chance. But you didn't. Now you're sitting on 2 losses. Kentucky fans, they're not as bad as like Oklahoma fans were earlier in the year, but Kentucky fans had some unrealistic expectations after like 2 or 3 weeks of the season. They thought they were beating Georgia, winning the East, going 12-0, competing with whoever in the SEC West title game, playoff potential. I said, no, calm all that down. Calm all that down. You're most likely a 9-3 team. If you get lucky, you can go 10-2. And depending on what else happens, maybe you get into a New Year's Six bowl game. And that should have been the goal for Kentucky fans. Not winning the East or the SEC or the playoffs. And now, in my opinion, you're not even making a New Year's Six game. So, enjoy the Outback Bowl or whatever they're calling it these days. And basketball season and whatever horse race bullshit that people pretend to care about one day a year with the Kentucky Derby. Look at this thing. Does this guy still have a job? Is Harsin still employed? I believe he is. He was employed when I started making this video. He was still employed. There's been rumors. There was rumors that Harsin would get fired if he lost to Georgia. I even heard a rumor that they were going to fire him after losing to LSU last week, but they didn't want the interim coach that they promoted to have his first game be what would likely be a blowout loss to Georgia, which is what ended up happening. So they were going to wait until after the Georgia game to fire Harsin. Well, here we are almost 24 hours later, and unless something has changed in the time I've been recording this video, somehow Brian Harsin still has a job. Look, Georgia helped you out, Barner, man, Auburn fans, Auburn administration, if you're watching, the boosters, especially if the Auburn boosters are watching, and let's be real, I'm pretty sure that they are. We did you a favor. We did you a favor. We packed up Harsin's bags for you. What's the holdup with the administration? We all know Brian Harsin is not coaching. We all know Brian Harsin is not coaching Auburn next year, right? Once you know that, what are you waiting on? It is time to cut bait with this guy. Now, look, I'd be perfectly happy if Auburn decided to keep him forever. I said that when he was hired. You're going to bring a guy down from the middle of nowhere in the Midwest and expect him to fit in the SEC at Auburn? Auburn's one of the toughest jobs in the country. They're sandwiched between 2 of the best programs in the country, in Alabama and Georgia, geographically. They have to play both of them every single year. Every recruiting battle they have is against either Georgia or Alabama or both. And for whatever reason, the fans, the boosters, and the administration place the same expectations on Auburn that Georgia and Bama have. And it doesn't make any sense. So it's one of the hardest jobs. But man, you better find somebody that really knows how to work and can really fit the culture down there. And whether it's right, wrong, fair, or unfair, you're going to have to find a coach that the boosters agree with. I don't agree with the boosters having as much power as they do at Auburn, but this is a problem that has been going on and festering for decades at Auburn. And if you don't have the support of the boosters there, you can forget it. And Brian Harsin didn't have the support of the boosters from the day he was hired. He didn't have the support of the boosters in the offseason, and he doesn't have it now. You better bring somebody in. I'm not saying you should ask them for permission to hire somebody, but look, whether you like it or not, the boosters are running the show down there. So it's probably going to continue to be a shit show. But I had to write some things down about Auburn because this is just hilarious. Of course, they lost to Georgia 42-10 yesterday, a 32-point loss. But listen to this. In Auburn's last 11 games, going back to last season and this season, their last 11 games, they're 3-8. 3-8. Against the Power 5, they're 4. Brian Harsin, since he got the job at Auburn, so all of last year and this year so far, he's 4-9. 4-9 against the Power 5. He's 3-3 right now this season. And listen to the schedule that's coming up. At Ole Miss. Loss. Home against Arkansas. Loss. At Mississippi State. Loss. That's 3-6. Home against Texas A&M. Loss. That's 3-7. Home against Western Kentucky. That's a 50-50 game. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You're 4-7. And then you finish things up on the road at Alabama. Best case scenario, 4-8. Telltale sign of a coach who might not know what the fuck he's doing. Like, I don't know, Brian Harsin, for example. Telltale sign. You want to hear this? Listen to this. Listen to this. Under Brian Harsin, this season, 3-3, Auburn is averaging 6 points per second half. Does the phrase halftime adjustments ring a bell? Does it mean anything to you? Georgia didn't play great in the first half yesterday, only up 14-0. But what happened in the second half? Poured it on. Georgia didn't play great in the first half against Missouri. But what happened in the second half? Outscored them 20-3 or whatever it was. Good coaches and great coaching staffs generally play better in the second half than they do the first half, generally speaking. You can have an anomaly here or there. Sure, any team, whether they're really well coached or not, can lay an egg in the second half every once in a while. But a really great coach team never averages 6 points per game in the second half, and you're 6 games into the season. That's absolutely abysmal. Brian Harsin's a failure. He never should have been hired. He's in over his head, and he doesn't know what he's doing. Moving on at a snail's pace. The Catholics versus the Mormons. Jesus. You ever watched the game and wanted both teams to lose? That's what I was doing. People were like, why is this game being played in Las Vegas? And neutral site games are getting ridiculous. And if it's going to be a neutral site game, why Vegas? Why Vegas? Why not Vegas? Vegas is Sin City. I can't think of a better place for a bunch of Catholics and Mormons to hang out for the weekend than Vegas, to be honest. So it made sense to me. A lot of people noticed something this week leading up to the game. People's general perception, for good reason, I think, was that BYU generally has been a better team this year than Notre Dame. So why was Notre Dame favored anywhere from 3 to 5 points, depending on where you looked and when during the week you looked? It seemed odd, right? And I pointed out on a couple of live shows, it's a trap. They were baiting you into taking BYU. They're not making smaller casinos, and they're not tearing down huge casinos and making smaller ones. Are they? No, they're not. Why? Because they know what they're doing. They tricked people into taking BYU, and Notre Dame not only won, but they covered. And I think this is a big win for Notre Dame because I feel like a lot of people didn't give them enough or really any credit for their win over North Carolina a couple of weeks ago. And, of course, they've got the, loss to Marshall, which was horrible. The week after that, they nearly lost to Cal. Didn't they go on the road to North Carolina? They win that game, right? I don't feel like they got any credit at all for that. Now they go on the road and play a pretty good BYU team. I mean, BYU's got a tough schedule, so they're probably going to finish with 3 or 4 losses or something. But BYU is, are they elite? Are they top 10? No. But they're a legitimately good team, and Notre Dame handled them. So I think that's a positive for Notre Dame. I think that's something that new head coach up there really needed. And I know the Notre Dame fans are happy. I found myself in a bit of a conundrum last night around 11 or 11:30, towards the end of the fourth quarter of this game. I had made up my mind all week long that number one, I didn't think Bryce Young was playing. He didn't. Number two, Jalen Milroe's a terrible quarterback as far as throwing the ball. He's inaccurate and looks very nervous in the pocket to me. I think he's too quick to take off running. Now, with that being said, he's an amazing runner when he does. But I feel like he takes off a little too soon sometimes. And that's maybe to be expected with a young quarterback who knows he can run. It's easier to do that than it is kind of to sit in the pocket when it's starting to close in and maybe go through your progression. So that's, potentially something he can get better at. But anyway, this is what I was thinking heading into the game, okay? I know Bryce Young's not playing. I don't think Jalen Milroe's a very good passer. And I don't think any of that matters. I think Alabama was going to win by 40. And if they can, they'll win by 100 because of what happened this summer and all that kind of stuff. The home crowd at Alabama wanted a blowout. I mean, really, there was no other reason for this game to receive the hype that it was getting. Texas A&M's been an abject failure this year, an absolute disaster. Literally no offense at all. Alabama was a huge favorite, 24-point favorite. There was really no reason to be motivated about this game, but the Alabama fans, of course, have had this circled since the summer. They showed up. They were loud. They made a lot of noise, and they got to see their number one ranked Alabama team struggle for 4 quarters to beat a horrible Texas A&M team, and then had to survive the last play of the game from like the 2-yard line or whatever it was. And Jimbo Fisher, just like we've seen him do game after game, year after year, made a horrible play call on that last play of the game. Incomplete pass. Alabama hangs on and wins by the skin of their teeth against a terrible Texas A&M team. But Lou, we were playing with our backup quarterback. So was Texas A&M. Gump. Haynes King was playing because Max Johnson is hurt, so they had a backup too. But I found myself torn in the fourth quarter because I also wanted Alabama to win that game by 100 points. I don't have a reason directly to not like Jimbo Fisher. We've played him one time. When I say we, I mean Georgia. Georgia has played Jimbo Fisher one time, and we beat him. We beat him a couple of years ago in Athens, whenever that was. We beat him. Or Texas A&M. Actually, was Jimbo Fisher even the coach then? I think he was. Because it was, 2017 or 18? Anyway, it doesn't matter whether it was Jimbo. The point is, I don't have a reason not to like Jimbo Fisher. Other than the fact that, I just don't like him. He's not a likable guy. I don't think he's a likable guy. I've talked all week, really for a couple of weeks, about how abysmal Texas A&M's offense is. And the problem is, that's not just Texas A&M's offense. That's Jimbo's offense. That's who Jimbo is. So people keep saying, myself included, he needs to hire an offensive coordinator. If he's not going to do it, then the university needs to tell him he has to do it. But here's the problem. If you make Jimbo Fisher your head coach, and you're paying him $9 or $10 million a year, and he has to go out and hire a different offensive coordinator, what are you paying Jimbo Fisher $9 or $10 million a year for? When you hire Jimbo Fisher, that's what you're getting. That's why you're hiring. It's for his offense. Now, everybody knows that offense is outdated. It's way too slow. There is incredibly too much talent on Texas A&M's offensive side of the ball for them to be putting up the pitiful numbers that they are week after week and year after year. But that's who Jimbo Fisher is. And it's starting to feel like an Auburn situation where, why do you need Gus Malzahn as a head coach if you don't want Gus Malzahn to run his offense? Like, that's the only reason you would hire Gus Malzahn, is for his offense. And then the offense would be terrible. Auburn would force him to hire an offensive coordinator. He'd hire one. It'd be okay for 1 year. Terrible the next year. He'd fire the OC. Malzahn would go back to calling plays. He would do terrible. The administration would force him to hire an OC. It was just a never-ending cycle. Is that where Texas A&M is headed? Because they're not firing Jimbo Fisher. So to the people that want that or think that or keep asking me that, somebody, they got oil money buried. And they're not paying a $40, $50, $60, $70, $80 million buyout. They're not doing it. They're not. You're stuck with Jimbo Fisher until and unless he leaves on his own. That's it. You're stuck with him. And the running joke about Texas A&M being an 8-4 team, 8-4 would be a miracle. 8-4 would be a miracle right now if Texas A&M somehow goes 8-4. I mean, they've already got 3 losses. They're going to lose more games. They might go 7-5. They might go 6-6. I don't know. I mean, they put up a good fight, I guess, yesterday. But you don't pay a coach $10 million a year to put up a good fight. $9-10 million a year, never even won the division. Never mind sniffed an SEC championship or a playoff appearance. It's just horrendous at this point. I don't know what the answer is at Texas A&M. Because like I said, if you make him hire an OC, then why do you need Jimbo? And I just don't think, whether they can afford it or not, that they're paying that kind of a buyout. I just don't think it's going to happen. Speaking of coaches that might be a little bit overpaid, Brian Kelly, the head corn dog in charge down in Baton Rouge, got absolutely annihilated by Tennessee. The score and some of the stat lines really don't even show or tell how dominating this game was. Now, I want to give LSU a little bit of credit in the beginning before we talk about how terrible they are. Tennessee got up to an early 10-point lead. That was not really the fault of the LSU defense. If you watched that game, you know what I'm talking about. Tennessee kicked off to start the game. LSU was going to get the ball. LSU fumbles the opening kickoff. Tennessee jumps on it at around the 20-yard line or whatever it was and scored a touchdown 3 plays later. Now, you can blame the defense if you want for giving up 20 yards, but it's 20 yards. It's not like the LSU defense allowed an 80-yard drive. You fumbled the opening kickoff. Tennessee jumped on it. They were already inside the 20 or whatever it was. They scored in 2 or 3 plays. Tennessee kicks back off to LSU. LSU gets the ball. Right on cue, they go 3 and out. They punt. They let the Tennessee punt return guy run all the way down to like the, whatever it was, 20, 30-yard line. Defense comes out, holds them to a field goal. That's all the defense can do in that situation. But the problem is, at that point, you're 2 minutes into the game. 2 minutes into the game, you're down 10-0. And the thing about the LSU-Tennessee game that a lot of people harped on this week, myself included, LSU has got to find a way to keep this game within striking distance. They've got to keep it close. Because even if LSU's offense plays as good as it can, it's not going to be able to keep up with Tennessee in a shootout type of game. They're not the type of offense that's going to be able to come back from 2 or 3 scores down to a team like Tennessee who can score so quickly and can run the score up on you in a hurry. And unfortunately, because of piss-poor special teams in the first 2 minutes of this game, which has been a theme for LSU all year, this game was basically over 2 minutes into the game, and it wasn't LSU's defense's fault, at least not at that point. Now, the defense wore out over the course of the game, and Tennessee put up a ton of points. Hendon Hooker played okay. He didn't put on a Heisman performance, and I had a bunch of Tennessee fans in my comment section during the game with the hashtag Hendon for Heisman. Hendon Hooker's had much better games than he had yesterday against LSU. He didn't play bad, but he had 230 yards or whatever it was. I mean, that's an average day for an average quarterback across the country, 230 yards. I think he had 2 touchdowns and an interception, or did he have an interception? Might not have an interception, but he did have, I think, 50 yards rushing or whatever. But, I mean, so he had a good game. I'm not knocking him. But there are other games to point to for the whole Hendon for Heisman deal. Yesterday didn't appear to be a Heisman performance to me from Hendon Hooker. It was a good performance, 230 yards. I think it was 17 of 27. So that's about 60%. I would love for somebody to go back and look and tell me the last time a quarterback won the Heisman with a 60% completion percentage. I'm going to tell you right now, it's been a while. Now, you know who Hendon Hooker's a lot better than? The quarterback for LSU. What's his name? Jaden Daniels? Night and day difference. Jaden Daniels is horrible. Absolutely terrible. LSU's got some good wide receivers, but if you don't have a quarterback that can get on the ball, what's the point, right? And Jaden Daniels is horrendous. Last week against Auburn, LSU passed for 80 yards. That was another stat people kept talking about coming into this week. How in the world is LSU going to keep up with Tennessee when they only threw for 80 yards against Auburn? You know how hard it is to only throw for 80 yards in 2022? I remember back in Kirby's first 3 or 4 years, like the Jake Fromm days, I used to stomp and bitch and moan because Georgia was only throwing for 160, 170, 180 a game. 80 yards was horrible. So how did that translate to playing Tennessee yesterday? Well, he went over 300 yards. He went over 300 yards. And you're going to say, well, he threw it a ton of times. He did throw it a ton of times. He also completed 71% of his passes. So, a much higher completion percentage than Hendon Hooker. So I'm not here to bash Tennessee or Hendon Hooker. He played a great game, and Tennessee absolutely annihilated him. I mean, Tennessee was only favored by 3, and they beat them by almost 40 or whatever it was. I mean, it was just an absolute beatdown in a tough place to play. I know it was at noon, so maybe that's a little easier than playing at night. It's still tough to play there. And Tennessee went in and just road graded them for 3.5 hours. I mean, you got to the point where you felt sorry for LSU. That's how bad Tennessee whipped them. Has anyone's opinion about Tennessee changed after the LSU game? Probably. They're going to move up in the rankings probably. Well, Kentucky lost. Well, they're going to move up regardless of who lost. But they're going to move up. I still have serious concerns about the Tennessee defense. 300 yards passing to LSU is abysmal. They're 100. They were 128th heading into this week in pass yards allowed per game. They might be dead last now, depending on what the teams that were 129 and 130 did this past week. But you gave up over 300 again. So I don't know. Now, they play Alabama this coming week, right? Can Tennessee beat Alabama? Yes. Tennessee can beat Alabama. They can beat Alabama, 100%. If Alabama fans look you in the eye and tell you they're not at all worried about the Tennessee game, they a damn lie. They're lying. If Hendon Hooker has a good game and Tennessee is able to move the ball and run that hurry-up offense, they got to get first downs. That's the key. Now, we'll talk a ton about that game this week, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it now, other than to say that the idea that some Alabama fans might have that they can't lose to Tennessee on the road in Knoxville, you better wake up. I'm telling you right, if you play Jalen Milroe, you will lose. You will 100% lose this game if you play Jalen Milroe. So we'll see if Bryce Young can go next week. I have a feeling he will. And that could be the difference in the game because Jalen Milroe can't hit the ocean from the beach. And I'm worried if I'm a Tennessee fan that Bryce Young is going to carve that secondary apart. That's my concern. I'm not saying that is what's going to happen, but that's going to be the talking point heading into that game. It's going to be Bryce Young and the Alabama passing game against the Tennessee secondary, which has been one of the worst in the country. Tennessee right now, to me, is last year's Michigan State. But instead of relying solely or mostly on the running game, which is what Michigan State did with Kenneth Walker, Tennessee has Hendon Hooker and those wide receivers, right? But their pass defense was non-existent. Last year, Michigan State was 130th in the country against the pass. Tennessee is currently 128th now. Michigan State ended up making a New Year's Six game, I think, because didn't they go 10-2? Tennessee might do that too. They might beat Bama. Look, they might beat Georgia. If Georgia plays bad, Tennessee's capable of beating Georgia. The odds, I think, are against it. Now, most people, well, first of all, Vegas had the Tennessee win total this year at 7.5, which was just ridiculous. I don't know who thought Tennessee was winning 7 games. If you bet the under on 7.5 this year for Tennessee wins, you're an idiot. I had Tennessee at 9-3 in my preseason rankings, and most Tennessee fans were happy with that, and they should be. That's a great year. That was I had them at 9-3 with losses to Bama, Georgia, and LSU. You whooped LSU. You're probably going to go at worst 10-2 because you're going to be a huge favorite over South Carolina, a huge favorite over Kentucky, a huge favorite over Mizzou, a huge favorite over Vandy. You'll be a touchdown underdog maybe against Alabama. You could actually bet the Alabama-Tennessee game last week before this weekend's games were played, and Bama was favored by 9.5 or 10 points, depending on where you look. I think that number is probably going to go down to 7. Tennessee's at home. They put on an offensive clinic this past weekend. I think that number is going to go down. Tennessee's probably going to be about a 7-point underdog against Bama. And then depending on what happens in that game, we'll see what the line is for the Tennessee-Georgia game. My guess is that Georgia's going to be somewhere between a 10 and a 13-point favorite because the game's in Athens. That's it. And you can still type to me if you want to about the Mizzou game. I really don't care, especially if you're a Tennessee fan. I'm just going to type back to you about an overtime win over a terrible Pitt team. It can go both ways. I don't think there's a college football fan on planet Earth that thinks Tennessee can't beat Georgia. Of course they can. I'm also sure there's not a college football fan on earth that thinks if both teams play their best game, that Georgia won't win. They will win. If both teams were to play their best, Georgia's better right now than Tennessee. Tennessee is headed in a good direction. This is going to be the best season they've had in a long, long time. They're off to their first 6-0 start since 2016. How'd that work out for you, Tennessee, man? Let me know in the comments down below. Started out 6-0. You must have won the East and made the playoffs or something. I don't know. But let me know how that season ended for you down in the comments. But Tennessee's going to have a really, really good season by any judgment or expectation. Whether it's 10-2, whether they beat either Georgia or Bama and end up going 11-1, or even if they stumble and end up 9-3, that's still a remarkable season for Tennessee, given where they've been the last 10 to 12 to 15 years. It just is. Tennessee is going to exceed almost any and all expectations for them for the second year in a row. That's hard to do. That's hard to do. You can take a job as a head coach of a terrible team, right? And the expectations can be in the floor, which is basically what was the case for Tennessee last year. It's pretty easy to exceed those. You know, if the expectations are you're going to win 5 games and you win 7, that's pretty easy to do. When the expectations are that you win 7 or 8, it's much harder to exceed that and get to 9 or 10. And Tennessee's most likely going to do that. They're a really, really good team. A really good team. I think they'll be about a touchdown underdog, according to Vegas, at home against Bama. I think Georgia will probably be favored somewhere between 10 and 14. We'll see what Tennessee can do with them, but LSU, good luck with Brian Kelly. Is Brian Kelly still running around with the whole family? This is my family. Is he still with that shit? I hope not. Oh, look, I had that. Let's save that. Let's save that. Only got 2 more to go. Arkansas. This video's way too long. Man, what in the world has happened to Arkansas? 3 straight losses now. I know KJ Jefferson didn't play yesterday, but he doesn't play defense, does he? Nope, he doesn't. And, boy, y'all did not look good. The heartbreaking loss to Texas A&M with the missed field goal, the beat down by Bama last week, and then Mississippi State, right? Make sure I get this right. 40-17. How did Mississippi State lose to LSU? How in the hell did that happen? College football is a weird sport, isn't it? Mississippi State looks like a top 15 team. But they lost to LSU. It's just strange. It's just so weird. So weird. But, you know, Will Rogers, another amazing day throwing the ball in that Bigfoot offense that Mike Leach runs out there. And it was just too much cowbell yesterday. Sam Pittman and Arkansas take their 3rd loss of the season and their 3rd loss in a row. Season over. Arkansas, another team, to me, that's a lot like Kentucky and Tennessee. They seem poised for like a New Year's 6 type of deal at some point soon. Arkansas and Kentucky are going to come up short again this year. Tennessee, on the other hand, very good shot at a New Year's 6 bowl, especially if 2 teams from the SEC make the playoffs. If 2 teams from the SEC make the playoffs, it's either going to be Tennessee or Ole Miss at this point, I think, that gets the SEC New Year's 6 game. So we'll see. But Arkansas, unfortunately, your season is over. And this program is not over. I'll leave you upside down, though. I made a joke yesterday that Oklahoma's dead. They're dead for this year. This is a dead team. It's not a dead program. But if Brent Venables, this is very alarming. What I expected to see from Oklahoma this year was a defense that played better than what I've seen from Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, and an offense that took a few steps back because they don't have Lincoln Riley or Caleb Williams or those wide receivers or whatever. Well, what I've seen is the Oklahoma offense fall off of a cliff, and the Oklahoma defense, not only has it not improved, it's worse. It's worse. And that is a very bad sign if you're an Oklahoma fan. I know the talent is not there at Oklahoma to turn them into a top 10 or top 20 defense overnight. But you've got basically the same talent you had there last year. And all your defensive numbers are worse. Worse. This is a worse defense right now at Oklahoma than any defense they ever had under Lincoln Riley. And just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. 30 39 passing yards for Oklahoma yesterday. Not in the first quarter, not in the first half, the entire game. 39 passing yards. It's 2022. It's 2022. 39 passing yards. 190 total yards. What about Texas? What about the OU defense? Oklahoma defense gave up 289 yards passing to a guy basically playing his second game ever. Quinn Ewers. I know he played against Bama, but he got hurt in that one. 289 yards you gave up to Quinn Ewers. Carved you up like a turkey. Carved you up like your fans, which a lot of them are turkeys. The ones that, boy, it seems like forever ago when Oklahoma fans were making fun of me for beating Kent State by 17, doesn't it? How's that worked out for you? Ever since you came over here and ran your cockholster about Georgia only beating Kent State by 17, you haven't won a single fucking game. And you might not win another one the rest of the year, but you gave up 289 yards passing to Quinn Ewers, 4 touchdowns he had against you. What about rushing? Even worse. You gave up 296 yards rushing. So not only is the Oklahoma defense worse in every statistical category than it was last year, with Brent Venables running the show instead of Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch, you're not good at anything. You can't stop the run. You can't stop the pass. And look, it's not just a talent issue. It's more than that. It's scheme. Players are out of position. There are multiple plays in each quarter where Texas is snapping the ball and Oklahoma's not even lined up defensively. They don't even know where to go. They don't even know what to do. That's 100% coaching. If a guy is in the right spot and he misses a tackle, or he's in the right spot and a receiver makes a catch on it, that's not coaching. That's talent and ability. If a player doesn't even know where to line up, if a Texas receiver is running down the field and there's not anybody within 20 yards of him, if Bijan Robinson touches the ball and no one touches him for 15 yards, that's all coaching. That is all. This is a horrible situation for Oklahoma. I'm not done. 49-point loss. Texas beat you 49-0. It's your biggest loss to Texas ever. Ever. Courtesy of Brent Venables. Oklahoma defense. In 3 Big 12 games this year. In 3 Big 12 games. All of which you have lost. You're giving up an average of 587 yards per game. That's not an anomaly. If someone comes out and has a good day against you and you give up 500 or 600 yards, okay, you can write that off. Let's regroup and see how we do next week. You've played 3 Big 12 games. Teams are averaging 587 yards against you. That means some are getting over 600, some are getting a measly 550. Look, you might as well forget about Oklahoma for the next couple of years. This cannot be fixed. Oklahoma's not winning the Big 12 this year, next year, or the year after that. Well, they won't be in the Big 12 year after that, but they ain't winning the SEC, are they? It's funny how things have changed. Last year, I had Oklahoma fans telling me, Texas might need to reconsider joining the SEC. Look how bad they are. Look how bad you are, Boomer. Look how bad you are. You might be the worst team in the Big 12. How is that possible? How is that possible? Worst team in the Big... right now, I would rank you dead last in the Big 12. You can't prove me wrong. You're 0-3. So you're in last place. A joke. An absolute joke. Miami, I already talked about them. All right, there you go. That's the highlighted list of losers. Who won yesterday but looked bad? Bama. Texas A&M's a horrible team. And it's not a rivalry game. Anything can happen. No, first of all, that's bullshit. It was bullshit last year when Auburn almost beat you and you said, the Iron Bowl. Crazy thing happened in the Iron Bowl. Yeah, like you losing. You almost got beat at home by Texas A&M. And they honestly should have beat you. They should have beat you. They get that penalty at the end of the game that gives them a play from the 2-yard line. Jimbo Fisher ran the worst goal line play I think I've ever seen. And like I said earlier, I'm not surprised because Jimbo Fisher is an offensive dinosaur. But man, y'all looked horrible. You looked horrible in that game. I'm sorry. You looked horrible in that game. How many turnovers did Jalen Mildew have? Look, what are y'all going to do when Bryce Young leaves? Jalen Mildew needs a lot of work. Yeah, he can run around. So can Anthony Richardson. And Alabama fans have been clowning him for 2 years. Now you have your own. That's all you have. He's Anthony Richardson. Jalen Mildew is horrible. Oklahoma State won 41-31. Not very impressive. Now, in this game, really, this was a close one here. This was a close game into the fourth quarter. I want to give Oklahoma State a little bit of a break, though, because they had a huge game last week on the road at Baylor, in which they won. And they had to turn around this week and play a pretty good Texas Tech team. I mean, let's remember Texas Tech beat Texas. But it's not really the score of the game, 41-31. I watched some of this game. Oklahoma State's defense, to me, I think is going to be what ends up keeping them out of the playoffs. I think offensively they might be good enough to go undefeated and win the Big 12 this year. I just feel like somebody on that schedule somewhere, a TCU, a Kansas, somebody is going to have a really good week at some point against them defensively. And as much as I like Spencer Sanders, he does have a turnover issue that pops up at times. And it seems to me, Oklahoma State lost their defensive coordinator to Ohio State, Jim Knowles. And Oklahoma State's defense was amazing last year. And there's just been too many times already this year where I've watched them play. And it's not that the defense is horrible. I mean, hell, they're not Oklahoma or anything like that. But in terms of having a defense that's good enough to get them to a 13-0 Big 12 title and a playoff bid, I feel like at some point that defense is going to let them down. And look, I've had Oklahoma State ranked higher than both the AP and the coaches poll every single week of the season. So I do think Oklahoma State is a legitimate top 10 team. I question whether they have what it takes defensively to take that next step and become a playoff team. But I could be wrong, and the defense could get better. So I'm not writing them off, but I wasn't overly impressed with Oklahoma State yesterday. And Ole Miss won 52-28 against Vandy, but Vandy was beating them at halftime, and it was just hilarious. So, if you just look at the score, you say Ole Miss destroyed them, and technically they did in the end. But how are you losing to Vandy at halftime? No way I'm putting you on the win good list when you're losing to Vandy at halftime. So those teams won and looked pretty bad doing it. Jalen Mildew, 12 of 19 for 111 yards throwing the ball. I think he did. What did he have? He might have had 50 or 60 yards rushing too, but he did have 3 touchdowns, but he had 2 turnovers, a fumble and an interception. I don't know about Jalen Mildew. Bama, you better hope Bryce Young plays this week, because if you don't, Tennessee is liable to bend you over right in the middle of Knoxville, Tennessee, and shove 3 or 4 fat ones in you if you have to play that game with Jalen Mildew. But we'll see. Who won and looked good? Got to make this quick. This is way too long. Georgia looked good, 42-10 over the Barn, 14-0 at halftime, ends up winning 42-10, rushed for 300 yards, which is by far their best rushing game of the year. Stetson Bennett, again, did not play well, at least didn't play as well as he played the first couple of weeks. But outside of him, I thought everybody else played great. The offensive line had maybe their best game of the year. I thought the defense played really good, holding Auburn to really just a field goal. They did score that touchdown against the second-string defense, and that was Georgia's fault because he had 3 guys there. They should have made the tackle on the sideline, and instead they tried to strip the ball out, and the Barner runs down the sideline for a touchdown. But 42-10, Dogs looked good. Ohio State rolled again, 49-20. C.J. Stroud had 6 touchdown passes. That's amazing, right? That somebody would have 6 touchdown passes in a game. What if I told you this is the 3rd game he's done that? This season, half the games he has thrown for 6 touchdowns. 49-20, they won. Clemson, 31-3 over Boston College. Now, it was close at halftime. Clemson and Michigan both got off to slow starts yesterday. It was the Michigan-Indiana game was tied at 10 at halftime. Indiana's not very good. Tied at 10 at halftime. Clemson and Boston College, Clemson was only up 10-3 at halftime. Now, neither game ended up being close. Michigan won 31-10. Clemson won 31-3, and I think those are good wins, and they played well. But just interesting to note, they did start off a little bit slow. Southern Cal, 30-14 over Washington State. Not a great win, but good enough, right? Tennessee, 40-13 over LSU. I feel like half this video already has been about Tennessee. UCLA, 42-32 over Utah. UCLA remains undefeated. Chip Kelly off to his best start since his Oregon days. 15 years ago or whatever it was, they beat Utah at home, at UCLA, in front of at least 300 people who bothered to buy tickets and go watch it. Oregon continues to roll no matter how mad it makes you in the comment section. I don't care how much you hate me or Georgia. The only thing you hate more than me or Georgia is Oregon continuing to dominate every single week. But Georgia continues to have the best win in all of college football this season with a 49-3 beatdown of Oregon, and they absolutely annihilated, was it Arizona? Yeah, 49-22. They're averaging like 50 points a game this season. They scored 3 against Georgia. Cry in the comments all you want to. South Carolina, shout out to them, 24-14 over Kentucky. Marshawn Lloyd had a good game. Spencer Rattler, not amazing. Still not what maybe you thought you were going to get, but played a pretty good game. Will Levis, of course, was out, but that's not South Carolina's problem. They won the game 24-14. And Notre Dame, 28-20 over BYU. Talked about that one already. All right. Who's the best teams in no particular order? In my mind, it hasn't changed. No particular order. Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Michigan. If the playoffs started today, if the playoff committee had to vote today, I believe those are the 4 teams they would vote into the playoffs. Now, they don't vote today, and Georgia and Bama are likely going to play in the SEC title game. And we know Michigan and Ohio State are going to play in the Big Ten title game. So don't get mad if you're an ACC or a Big 12 or a Pac-12 and blah, blah, blah. This stuff is going to get itself worked out. But to me, those are the best 4 teams right now. Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Michigan in no particular order. I think you have a tier after that includes teams like Clemson, Southern Cal, Oklahoma State, TCU. Hell, you want to throw UCLA in there? Whatever. Oregon, whoever you want to throw in that second tier, okay? That's how I see it right now. Heisman list. I change my Heisman list every week, and I'm going to do it again now. I don't know if I've ever done this in week 6, but right now, I have one name on my Heisman list, and it's C.J. Stroud. It would be a unanimous vote right now. It would be a unanimous vote right now if the Heisman voters casted a ballot today. He would get every single vote, period. The guy's had 6 touchdown passes 3 different times. He's got 24 touchdown passes in 6 games. He's on pace for 55 touchdown passes this year. He can run if he needs to, but he doesn't need to because he's got Travion Henderson and all those wide receivers. He just continues to come out and complete 70 to 80% of his passes, throw 4, 5, 6 touchdowns a game. He doesn't turn the ball over. He is the best quarterback in college football right now on a top team. And that's generally who wins the Heisman, right? It's not necessarily the best player in college football. If it was, you could talk about people like Will Anderson or Brock Bowers, the tight end at Georgia, or whatever other names you want to name. But the reality is, we all complain about it. The reason we complain is because we know it's true. The Heisman goes typically to the best quarterback out of the top 4 or 5 teams. That's just usually who wins it. And I'm serious. I think if they voted right now, C.J. Stroud would get every single vote. He's my only name on the Heisman list this week. Stetson played not good again. He hasn't thrown a touchdown pass since week 3. The Heisman is a stat award. Stetson's not winning the Heisman or even getting invited if he can't throw any touchdown passes for 3 and 4 games in a row. Bryce Young didn't play this week. I'm not going to hold that against him for the Heisman. But I judge the Heisman week to week, and there's nothing for me to judge this week for Bryce Young because he didn't play. Hendon Hooker is having a really good season. He's not winning the Heisman. I don't know what else. The guy just hates Tennessee. He's not winning the Heisman. I don't know what to tell you. He completed 60% of his passes yesterday for 230 yards. That is not a Heisman performance. I'm sorry. It's just not. It's not that he needs to play better or do better. He's doing great. He is who he is. He might be the second best quarterback in the SEC, okay? Maybe it's Bryce Young and then Hendon Hooker. I don't know. What do you think about Will Rogers or whatever. So there's some good QBs, and Hendon Hooker's right up near the top of that list. He's not winning the Heisman. Tennessee fans, man. I swear, this is why it's so fun to point and laugh at Tennessee fans year after year. Normally when a team has been terrible for 15 years straight, you get tired of making fun of them. Like nobody makes fun of Kansas. Nobody makes fun of Andy. That's kind of been Tennessee the last 15 years. But the reason it stays so funny to point and laugh at Tennessee fans is because what they do to themselves every single year. There's no middle ground for Tennessee fans. They either think they're absolutely horrible and they want the coach fired again for the umpteenth time in the last 12 years, or They're going 100-0 and every player on their team is winning the Heisman. And right now, that's the song they're singing. They're going to beat Bama. They're going to beat Georgia. They're winning out. They'll beat Bama again in the SEC title game. They're going to the playoffs. They're going to beat Ohio State by 50 in the first round. They're going to beat whatever deadbeat they put in the championship game by 100. And Tennessee is going to be the first ever 25-0 national champion and the first team ever to have 3 Heisman Trophy winners win a Heisman Trophy in the same season. That's the song they're singing. And that's why it's so fun to point and laugh at those dumbass idiot Voltards. Have a great day.